Welcome everyone to the February 2023 edition of the Cerini Connection. As of December 22, unemployment in New York State was approximately about 3.5%. That was about 0.8% lower than the national average. And for the first time in I don't know how long, more than half of the workforce, 55 or older, was actually had taken themselves out of the workforce. So we see that there's like this kind of big need for hiring, a big need for staff. So all of these are kind of indicative of some of the lowest levels in 50 years. While there was a significant level of layoffs in January, a lot of the technology-based companies did lay off a bunch of people earlier this year. We're still seeing that the labor market is extremely tight, especially in certain pockets. I mean, we're seeing it in education, we're seeing it in healthcare, financial. We can't find accountants, so if anybody knows of anybody, might as well go for a commercial here. And then some of the low wage earners like direct service providers and stuff. So it's becoming a much bigger challenge. So what can employers do to effectively attract and retain quality employees? Today, we're joined by Ed Probst, president of Vanguard Benefits, who works with both nonprofits and for-profit businesses to assist them in better understanding the employment marketplace and how to become an employer of choice. Because at the end of the day, employees matter. At least that's what it says in the back there in the sign. So, so Ed, first of all, thank you for doing this, and thank you for being, part of the Cerini Connection today.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So this is an extremely important topic. So before we get started and get into maybe some of the specifics here, do you see any relief happening in the marketplace? And what should employers do to maybe stay ahead of the curve here?
Yeah, very challenging question. I think there's a lot of variables that go into the answer to that question. Personally, I do not see any relief in sight anytime in the near future. And I suppose there are factors, economic factors, that could play into that could soften the market to some degree. But I think there are also some strong factors that are not going to go away. For instance, minimum wage increases, remote workforces, and more consumerism than ever before. I mean, the candidate, the applicant is a more educated consumer than any time in history in the job market. And I think these are things that are not going to go away. I think they're going to continue to strengthen. So from that perspective, yeah, I think there are peaks and valleys, and we may see some softening at times. But I think this marketplace, like a lot that has gone on in, let's call it the post-COVID world, there are a lot of changes in our society and culture. Driving down the street, every day you see a new Rite Aid or a new supermarket or a new retail shop that is boarded up, that's no longer in business. And I think that's indicative of one thing is, the online business that's going on in this country. And that was seriously exacerbated during COVID. I mean, I know, my mom and my dad never used to go online to buy things. They would still go to the stores, and people like them during COVID, they started shopping online. And that's one analogy that is never going back. And so I think in this world that we live in right now, I think those things are going to stay. And what that's going to force employers to do is just to be better recruiters, better employers, more engaged with their employees in order to stay ahead of the curve. And I think it's important to note that this is not just a COVID thing. I think society and the employment world was trending in this direction even prior to COVID. And, I looking back in preparation for this, I was looking back at some articles back in 2018 and 2019 that was talking about tough recruiting markets. So I think employers to get ahead of this, I think they, because it's not all one size fits all. I think some employers are being heavily impacted right now, and others maybe not so much. I have clients that are taking advantage of this environment where they can, and they are recruiting in other markets and being, in other states, and being very, very creative when it comes to using this online presence that's there. And then, we have others that are in the OPWDD space that are really finding it hard because there's teacher shortages or minimum wages impacting DSP workers. I think employers need to look into the future, create marketing plans, like they would in their strategic sales plans for how they're going to work within this market, and factor in that we live in an immediate gratification world now, and that applicants are mostly looking for their employers online. So they're going to have to adapt if they haven't already, make their onboarding processes quicker. That time frame from when you engage the applicant for the first time to the first time that they receive a paycheck has got to be quicker. I was just speaking to one of our clients that was telling me that their pre-employment screening service that they were using, they decided that they needed to look in another direction because it was taking now 4 days for their pre-employment screening to be complete, which was holding that applicant from getting to work. I think those are the things that have to be looked at, because you're going to lose applicants if you don't.
So I know you kind of just touched on a couple of them here, but what do you see as some of the key factors that employers need to implement in order to kind of get that employer of choice designation? What are the things that I guess employees are expecting from their employers?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it's a mindset and maybe a paradigm shift in how they're creating their benefits packages for their employees. And I think what has to be looked at is how you're impacting the employee's lifestyle. Recruits are looking at employers right now to see how these employers fit into their lifestyles as they currently are situated. I think employers have to recognize that, and they have to start customizing their benefit package to give those employees those services that they are most looking for. Not all employees are looking for salary increases over the next employer. A lot of employees are out there and would take a reduction in salary if it meant their work-life balance was better. So I think it's important to do that and to look at it as if you're adding value to people's lives. Like, one of the things we do, you mentioned earlier, our tagline is because employees matter. And, that kind of stems from an approach that we've had over the years where we meet with employees one-on-one. We've always seen the significance of educating an employee and having them understand their benefits and help them. But through those one-on-one meetings over the years, you learn a lot about what employees are thinking and how personal benefits are to their life, whether that be, a benefit that impacts a disabled child they have, or a benefit that is helping a family that's having challenges with childbirth or conception, things of that nature that impact, or just a sick family member at home. All these things play into the life cycle of the employee. And I think the employers should start looking at this as more of a total rewards program than a benefits package, something that rewards their lifestyle, like remote or hybrid options. A lot of employees are going to be looking, or potential employees are going to be looking for at least hybrid work options where they can work home from certain days and be in the office from certain days. And I think employers are now starting to create their workspaces so that they're conducive to that model, meaning that the employees feeling like they're at home when they're in the office to some degree.
One of the things I was going to say, sorry, I didn't interrupt, but one of the things that we're seeing is that there actually is a big disparity between what management is looking for and what employees are looking for. 30 some odd% of all employees want to actually be back in the office, and 70 some odd% of all management wants their employees back in the office. So you've got this huge disconnect, and it's going to be important to kind of figure out ways to kind of bridge that disconnect that exists. And, I don't know what you're seeing out there in the marketplace in terms of that happening.
Yeah, so I mean, it's definitely a shift for the employees that they want that flexibility. Managers, I think the managers are only going to be their thought process on that is going to be as the ownership or the company or the nonprofit organization's culture is, right? So if you're still in that mindset where we need to have people on site and you're not creating any flexibility or adaptability in that mindset, well, then your management's going to convey that to your workforce and potentially your recruits. that's fine, but that may not be conducive to an effective recruiting strategy, because we know that at the end of the day, in a marketplace where recruiting is challenging, as you mentioned, 70% of the employees are looking to have some kind of work-life balance and work from home, or just a hybrid option from working from home. So I think there's going to have to be some flexibility in that thought process, and I think from the top down, that's going to have to be trained, something that's trained through management as they're working with their employees, and that comes from strong leadership, comes from getting feedback from the employees, analyzing data, surveying employees as to what they like, what they don't like, and then training management on this feedback, so that they are actually conveying the message that the employer wants. And it's a culture thing. This has really got to be something that, because employees, they are looking for culture. They're looking for employers that are socially responsible, employers that are committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And this is something that is seen from the outside as well. If they're going to be looking at employers' websites and social media and traffic, and they're going to be looking to see if their culture is showing these types of traits. I think that will be something that will impact recruiting.
I think one of the challenges that employers are facing is, they build this culture, but if you're dealing with a remote workforce or a hybrid workforce, it's much harder to kind of build that culture around, or have the staff embrace the culture that you've built. And that's kind of been one of the challenges in terms of, how do I build culture? How do I, create this work environment if there aren't people, coming to work? They're kind of working remotely, and I've got to try to push this culture out, in a different way than I normally did. So that's, I think, part of the challenge that employers are dealing with right now, is kind of, how do I create that culture?
Yeah, so it's definitely more difficult when you're remote. So it's going to have to be a lot more of engaging the staff and through team meetings, team bonding events, even outside office events. Like, I was just looking at a client of mine today that right before the meeting, I was checking out social media, and they were hosting an event that was a mixer. And they were inviting it was a nonprofit. They were inviting donors, they were inviting their employees, and they were inviting their partners to a singles mixer. And I think that is interesting. I thought it was very creative, because, again, going back to what we were speaking about before, I think now it's showing that you are in tune or engaged with people's lifestyle, not just employees, but people's lifestyle, and that you're willing to support that lifestyle. That makes a big impact. So I think engaging the employees more than ever. I mean, if you're having a remote workforce and you're not communicating with them several times a day, or at least through various meetings throughout the week and team building exercises, that's going to be hard to keep that culture. But there are definitely ways. I mean, we have employer groups that do team Jeopardy meetings, and they'll do bingo online, and all these kind of games, and just team building exercises that they can keep their employees together. And maybe the answer is also some face-to-face time outside of work hours. Events like I mentioned, the in-person mixer, whatever that might be. It doesn't have to be a singles mixer, but it's some kind of team building exercise on the outside to keep them engaged within the culture.
I mean, and again, I know this is, from the other side, but that's a place also where nonprofits can kind of come into play in terms of creating volunteering sort of experiences for employers, so that the employees can kind of come together in a team building sort of exercise in terms of, and also making a difference, through volunteering.
Yep. Agreed.
What are you seeing out there in terms of maybe some more creativity in, because I think we talked about it. I think employees are looking for two things, right? They're looking for that flexibility with respect to where they work, and they're looking for flexibility with respect to how much they work or how they work. What are you seeing in terms of employers being maybe a little more creative in terms of hours, in terms of how many days a week people work? Are you starting to see people move to a 4-day work week? You know, still getting that 35 or 40 hours in, but in a shorter time frame. I mean, what sort of things are you seeing out there that employers are offering?
Yeah, it's a mixed bag, and it's really relevant to the type of employer. I've seen everything where we have employers that are completely remote from top down. Nobody even goes to the office at all. I've seen workspaces where there's on and off shifts where half the staff comes in on Monday and Wednesdays and the other half comes in on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Everybody's remote on Friday. And so that they don't have the entire staff on any one day. But they do have a hybrid balance of that. And then we still have clients that are mandating their employees that they have to come to work every day, and depends on the sector you're in. If you're in a sector where remote, if you're in some kind of professional service or you're in nonprofit that's not servicing, let's say like in the OPWDD space, that's a difficult proposition to have a completely remote workforce. But if you're in some kind of nonprofit sector where you can support a remote, then you do have to have some kind of balance to that. Otherwise, it's going to be tough to compete in those markets. But we even see now that, I have clients that are recruiting online and hiring online they're turning it around in a day or two, the employees working by the end of the week, and they've never met anybody in person. It's completely remote, and now their job is remote. So I think it's there's not one size fits all to any of this. I think you really have to first improve, make sure that your culture is conducive to what these candidates are looking for, and then do the best to work within your infrastructure and what your business needs and goals are to make sure that you're productive.
And again, as you said, I think it also creates some difficulties when that same business requires multiple things, such as some of your staff can work remote or hybrid and other staff can't work remote or hybrid. They have to be on site all the time. And how do you kind of create that balance where, the one side sees the other side and says, hey, what about me?
Yeah, and I think in that situation, that's a difficult situation to have anybody completely remote. I think that's where that balance comes in. So if you bring up a great point. If you have a component of your workforce that just has to be on site, then I think it's hard to get another component of your workforce that, even though they could work virtually, that they work virtually all the time. I think in that environment, you need to have some kind of hybrid where those employees are not, feeling slighted because the others are never there.
And that's where you can also, as I said before, maybe you can work out a more flexible work time frame where maybe they work 4 days a week so that they feel like they have that extra day off.
Yep.
What are you seeing, since recruiting and retention has been a kind of a difficult sort of thing? What are you seeing out there in terms of some of the more creative ways that employers have gone about recruiting, or some of the more creative recruiting ideas you've seen out there in the marketplace?
Well, I mean, of course, social media is huge right now, but I don't think I'm breaking any barriers by mentioning social media at this point. I think that's something that everybody is engaged with now in some capacity, and has an understanding that it's vital to their recruiting efforts. I think where some more creative ideas can come into the social media realm is to be really targeted, use artificial intelligence to go where, and understanding what your needs are, what you're looking for, and then go to the places that and target the areas where those people hang out, right? For instance, if you're looking for, a younger generation, millennial type workforce, maybe you want to advertise on Spotify or on TikTok. You and I were laughing before about TikTok, and we were talking about how my 12-year-old daughter, it's hard to keep her off of it, but it's not just 12-year-olds. It's much older than that, and there's a younger population out there that lives on TikTok. So if you can find ways to advertise on medias that they are engaged with, it's going to help you, get that that recruit. Job fairs. And I think both of these are related, because I think what's important when you're using social media or any type of forum, you are trying to show, you're trying to lift up the curtain a little bit and show what's going on behind the scenes or inside internally in your organization, that they can't just get from an advertisement or a job board. So I think job fairs, we had a client that just mentioned to me that they had a success. They hosted a job fair. And the one thing that was good about the job fair is they had their employees engaged in the job fair in helping meet the candidates. So candidates were coming in, they got to tour the facilities, they got to meet with the employees that are already there, understand a little bit about the culture, and they had a lot of success. Or I think they at this one job fair, I think they said that they took on 10 applicants, which was a high for them, for the year in any given period. So I think, but the theme of both of it is you can use, like on social media, you can do the same thing, right? You can create like a virtual reality world where you're pushing out content that's showing what's going on in your organization, and maybe having employees engage in that process where they're showing, what they do. Like if you have, like I have a client that has a great candy kitchen in their workspace, and employees are always going in there to pick up candy during the day. So maybe you have an employee and you're showing them in the kitchen, and of course that's not great for the dental bills, but but the point is showing them engaged at work, having fun at work, and it's not really work to some degree, right? It's their career. So I think those two, but both of them are giving an insight as to what is going on in the organization. And of course, sign-on bonuses, referral fees to current employees, those are always helpful as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing more and more companies kind of building out their recruitment section of their website to include more videos, more experience sort of things, even tools for candidates in terms of like, we're in the process of redoing our recruiting section of our website, where we're going to be, looking at articles and videos on how to build a resume, how to go through an interview, how to do all of those things. Because again, the more that we can get people coming to us and seeing us as a resource, the better off we're going to be.
Yep.
So, what are you seeing in terms of how some of your clients that you're working with, how are they working with some of the universities and colleges that are out there, and what that sort of experience is? Are you seeing an uptick in internships or any of that stuff in order to attract people?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think the local colleges could be we talked about job fairs, right, in conjunction with local colleges. I think advertising on their social media, advertising on their websites. I mean, the colleges' websites, things of that nature is helpful. There's definitely an uptick in internships that we're seeing, as especially, again, where are these candidates coming from? That's the youth. That's our youth of our country, and they're all engaged on social media, right? So if you're, the people that are in college right now are, just like most people, are attached to their phone, but they're really engaged in technology. So I think those internships, those advertisements in that forum can be really impactful if those are the candidates that you're looking for.
Yeah. Colleen posted a question asking about tax benefits of childcare. Colleen, if you want to reach out to me later, I will kind of put you in touch with some information. That's a good question, and we'll probably try to push some information out and get it out to the group as part of this webinar. So thanks. You've talked a little bit, Ed, about benefits and some of the, the need to look at benefits and creating an overall benefit package that's an attractive benefit package. Aside from obviously the core benefits like health insurance, what sort of like interesting or new benefits are you seeing? I know Colleen mentioned childcare, in her question, but what other things are you seeing out there?
Well, I think for one, there's a huge uptick in services and benefits that support well-being, and that's just not just wellness, but well-being, right? To make sure that, I mean, there's a lot of reports we could talk about employee burnout at work, especially over the last few years, Zoom burnout, things that are affecting employees, absenteeism and presenteeism. I think employers are now way more astute to that. They understand what is happening in the workplace and how it affects productivity. So we are seeing, for one, on the mental health side, years of doing one-on-one sessions with employees, I will tell you the number one inquiry in our sessions over the years by far was mental health inquiries. Employees looking to find out how they can use their plans to support their mental health needs, whether that be finding providers that actually take insurance or using EAP programs or things that could be impactful to them. That's a great thing, in my opinion, and I've always said it because it's kind of lifting the stigma associated with mental health, which I believe we've made tremendous impact and inroads with over the years. And so now I think employers are really engaged in that, and they understand our inquiries for EAP, employee assistance programs, have been higher than they've ever been. And employee assistance programs simply provide resources where employees can call a hotline, and even some provide in-person visits to meet with a mental health provider, and it's employer provided. So that I think will continue to only grow, which I think is a tremendous thing. But I'm also seeing some stuff that can be impactful as a proactive measure, right? So, we have clients that actually have mental health break rooms in their locations, where if you go in the break room, they have comfortable chairs and aromatherapy and soft music and low dim lighting, and you can go in there and take a break if you need a mental health break. We have employers that are providing mental health days. It's categorized as that as part of their PTO programs. Of course, fitness, all that kind of fits into this as well. If you have a building that has a gym in it, I think that is, again, not everybody's going to be able to have a building that has or a location that has a gym in it, but maybe you could get a discount at a gym membership, a local member, if it's not provided by your health plan. So I think that will only continue to grow. I'm seeing things like on-site type of stress reduction seminars. Like we partner with an organization that will go in and educate the employees on how to de-stress during the day, how to do things like not sit in front of your computer 5 hours straight, but to get up and take a walk around the office, maybe talk to somebody, do little things that when you're really, really focused on your job, sometimes you forget to do. The importance of hydration in mental health and physical health. So those are some of the things that we see. Of course, like the creative things, pets, right? Everybody loves their pets. It's funny because we have an advertisement that we're putting out on social media soon, and it's about pet insurance, right? Because we're getting a huge uptick in inquiries about pet insurance, and our ad says something, it's the cute cat or kitten on it, and it says cover your pet, and on the bottom in just small letters it says, and we cover humans too. So pets they support mental health, they support stability and well-being for employees, and we're seeing employers that are doing things like bring your pet to work day. And they're doing things like pet insurance to take care of that pet. So
for me, the toughest part about bringing your pet to work day is when I bring my fish in. It's kind of hard.
It doesn't talk back.
Yeah. So anyway, people don't want to pet them.
Financial wellness too fits into there, right? So, if you have a 401k provider or even your property and casualty broker, having them be on site at times to just do a financial checkup for the employee, or maybe help them with their home and auto, right? All that kind of stuff, if they can find savings, reduces stress. So there's some simple things you can do that don't cost the organization anything, but could be really impactful to an employee.
Yeah, and I think that's extremely important. And again, it's helping to build that culture. It's helping to build that culture where employees feel as it says, because employees matter.
Right.
All of that type of stuff. And again, when you're dealing with some of that stress relief type stuff, how do you deal with it where you're kind of maybe bringing somebody in or trying to create some stress relief within the office environment when people are working remote? So how do you what are you seeing employers doing in terms of creating that stress break at home employees working from home also?
Yeah, I think it's education. It's really they have to be educated on the same things that they would be in the office that they could do at home, and probably more difficult at home, right? Because it's probably easy to sit on a couch and watch TV when you're not working. I would say that some of the things I've seen is encouraging to have a stress reduction day where you bring in a team and you encourage those employees to be at work just for that day, so that they can participate in that education session. Or if that don't work, they can still engage them on Zoom by doing these seminars and workshops on Zoom. And I think getting them out of the house is really important, but for some it isn't. Everybody's different, right? There's some people that can really thrive in that environment, and they understand that, okay, I could be productive, walk away, come back and be productive again, and others can't. Others, get attached to that technology or that computer, and you don't realize until after 6 hours that you're working. So I think the employer's job there is to interrupt them, just to make sure that there are resources and there are opportunities for them to engage with somebody that can help them identify that proactively, to identify when they're starting to feel burnt out, to identify when they've been working too long, because I think one thing that comes from this remote world is, for some people, you wind up working more than you did when you were at the office, right? If you had a 9 to 5 position or whatever your hours would be, at that time, most people you leave the office. But it's very easy when you're home or you're remote to say, I just got to finish this. And next thing you know, you've worked an additional hour, and that can really relate to burnout. So I think proactive measures when it comes to that, and identifying when that's starting to happen, that's what's really going to make an impact.
Right. So you talked a lot about kind of creating this, workplace of choice and creating a positive work environment. How do you go about, in that recruitment function? How do you go about kind of telling your story? How do you go out communicating your difference to potential employees?
Yeah, I mean, I think that goes back to things we talked about before. I mean, education is key, but showing your culture, showing your mission is really important to candidates, and from a retention standpoint, it's your employees as well. So from a retention standpoint, showing employees that understanding the mission and having them really see that. I think the advertising to your own staff is just as important as the advertising to the outside world, right? So to have them see what's going on. We had an employer that did a strategic plan, and they did a SWOT analysis, and they invited 80 employees to come in and participate in that exercise and create their new mission value statement. I thought that was really impactful. And the same employer that did the job fair, right? They got the employees engaged. That's on a retention standpoint. On the outside, I think I'll go back to like that virtual reality type of scenario. Is you have to create as much production, as much content as you possibly can to show the culture that's going inside in your organization, and then have that constantly updated on your websites, have it out on your social media platform where they're looking for it. I mean, if a recruit is considering your organization, just like anything else, the first thing they're going to do is go to your website, right? So they're going to go to your website, and what are they going to see there? Are they going to see a diverse, inclusive environment with happy people that are engaged at work, or are they going to see people that are just at their desks doing work? Right. So I think it's important to get that out there in all of your marketing. If you're a sales organization, I would it would, and all organizations have sales to some capacity. I would liken it to the same approach you would take if you were selling your product or service. You have to sell your organization and your brand to the outside world. So that might mean that you need to do some kind of rebrand. If that brand is not clear and that mission is not stated, that might be the first place you want to start, is to rebrand that organization, do a strategic plan or analysis to see, that if the mission, the values, everything in your organization is lining up and it's being shown evident to your employees and your recruits.
What about things like Glassdoor and, ratings? How is that being looked at by potential recruits?
Yeah, I think it's all part of it. I think they go there, they're looking at employer ratings. I think they want to see, they're looking online to see if there's any negative feedback out there by other candidates that are talking, that they're leaving comments about their experience. I think that goes into it to some degree, but I still think that they're going to, the employee is, it's just like, it's the same thing when you're selling a product or service online. They'll say like you really have maybe 15 seconds to get that person's attention when you're doing that. I think the same thing goes with with an employee or potential recruit. I think as they're looking at it, if you're advertising and marketing to that employee is showing your culture, it is showing a positive environment, and you're getting the point across to them quickly, I think that that's going to go a long way to getting them to the next step. Yeah, I think they'll use Glassdoor and other formats to validate that. But I think the first thing is getting them that message to them directly, concisely, and getting them engaged right away to that next step. That'll help more than anything. So
to switch gears a little bit here, I mean, obviously the economy has been a little bit off over the last year plus. We've seen, rise in interest rates. We've seen inflation running. We've seen the stock market coming down, which has put a lot of price pressure on businesses and nonprofits in terms of trying to find ways to curtail costs and everything else in order to keep margins at some sort of respectable levels. So, we're talking about, being competitive with respect to benefits and kind of creating benefit packages. You mentioned before things like retention bonuses and sign-on bonuses and stuff like that. That all sounds great, but from a dollar and cents perspective, there's still limited resources that are coming into companies and organizations. What kind of things can companies do in terms of trying to maybe keep some of these costs down and still be able to offer more in terms of a more robust package?
Well, I think one thing is that employers should place more emphasis, and they are, on voluntary benefits, right? You're going to have your core benefits like your health insurance, and health insurance costs are tremendous impact and a tremendous part of your recruiting efforts, right? Because if they're going to ask questions after salary about benefits, and benefits, if your benefit package when it comes to health insurance is not strong and it's costing a lot of money, that's going to definitely factor into the employee's decision-making process. So unfortunately, that's a key driver to it. However, I think that there is some flexibility in that, and there are things that can be done to help keep costs at a minimum when it comes to health insurance benefits, and then also make your benefit package attractive. I would suggest that, going back to some of the things we talked about before, like pet insurance and things like that, bolster up your voluntary benefit package. And when I say voluntary benefit package, I mean benefits that are available for employees through payroll deductions that they pay for. It might sound like it's cringeworthy because you're just passing on another cost to your employee, but I will tell you, when it's educated properly, employees buy things, especially products and services, that you wouldn't think, because it supports their financial well-being. For instance, voluntary products that might fill in the deductibles or the gaps in their health insurance plans, or might pay them if, God forbid, they had untimely cancer, or cancer is always untimely, but or they have life insurance needs, and maybe they can't get life insurance on the outside because they have a health condition, or they have something that's creating a roadblock with a life insurance carrier. I think those are important to bolster the package. So I would add voluntary benefits. I don't think employees see them as intrusive. When they're educated on them, they buy them. And usually they can buy them at deeper discounts and take advantage of pre-tax savings when sometimes they can't get these benefits on the outside, or if they do, they're not as tax efficient.
All right, so you were talking about some of the health insurance and things like that. I know there are also ways that employers can kind of bring down health insurance through things like fully or partially insured plans, bronze plans with high deductibles. Talk a little bit about those and PEOs and what all of that can possibly do.
Yeah, so I in the spirit of what we're talking about today, from a recruiting standpoint, I think it's imperative that employers do not get complacent when it comes to looking at this, especially what is certain to be their first or largest expense that they pay for their employees. So I would spare no expenses, and you mentioned the ones, right? It depends on the size of the organization as to what opportunities they can explore. But certainly, if you haven't looked at a PEO yet, you should. It's not something that I would say is right for all sizes of businesses or all types of businesses, but there are certainly enough opportunity there for some organizations to drive down health insurance costs at times significantly, especially if you're a small organization, less than 100 employees. And I'll speak about New York now, because that's where we are right now. It's a little bit different outside New York, but if you're a small employer under 100 employees in New York and you haven't at least entertained PEO, you should. And I think the way to do it, not as an advertisement for ourselves, but to work with an organization like ours that will help you explore the entire PEO market and not just one PEO. PEOs can be challenging. They require a lot of data in order to get a proper proposal. And sometimes if you go to one organization, PEO, and you weren't right for them, it can sour you on the experience when there could be another one that's right for you out there. So I think it gives a good opportunity to at least explore health insurance reduction costs. And then everything else that you mentioned fits into some form of self-insurance, right? So if you are an employer, whether you're small or large, you should have been looking at already, or should look at, either health reimbursement arrangements or HSA compatible plans. That is what I feel is your first entry point into potential self-insurance, which is what you meant, right? Taking on more retention, taking on more of a risk to the employer and shifting that away from the employee. For instance, we have a client that, they're about 80 employees, and we've had them on a strategy for the last, it's got to be 6 years now, where year over year, through the use of a health reimbursement arrangement where they reimburse for specific services that are covered under deductible in the health plan, like outpatient surgery, inpatient hospitalization, where these are low utilized and underutilized services, right? So you're not going to have a high percentage of inpatient hospital stays. So the numbers can be calculated as such where you can really create savings for yourself and the employee. So, what we've been able to do in that situation is create a scenario where the employees have had the exact same benefit level for 6 years. And we've been able to keep their payroll deductions almost at or very close to the way they've been. So I would look at that. HSAs, of course, is another way. Now, some employers would prefer not to use HSAs or put money into HSAs because it takes that money, it takes that money away from the employer right up front and becomes the employer's money. And some want to do it that way. But certainly, again, in the spirit of retention, you're now taking on some risk as an employer, but it's calculated risk. If it's designed properly, you're not going to be put in a situation where, because you set up that HRA, you spent more than what the fully insured premium would have been. So that's things that you should consider. As far as self-insurance, I think that is another option that if you qualify for to be a self-funded plan, which in New York, I'll go back to, you can only buy stop loss insurance if you're over 100 employees. So if eligible employees. So if you have 100 eligible employees, you should certainly consider it. There are things out there that can help with actually driving down the cost of care. When you become self-insured now, you have the ability to impact the actual cost of care, which is really what's driving health insurance premiums. So things like Northwell Direct, which is a direct direct to participant, direct to hospital plan, where now you are purchasing services directly from a hospital system at deeper discounts. And you can create a strategy, like one strategy we just created, which is a tiered scenario where it was a self-insured plan. We created a scenario where they could spend no more than 14% over their current, where they were going to spend 29%. And we created a scenario where their employees had a choice. They could use the Blue Cross Blue Shield network or go to Northwell. And if they go to Northwell, their copays and deductibles were half what they were with the Blue Cross Blue Shield network. And every dollar that flowed through Northwell was at a 20 to 25% discount to the plan funds. So those are things that I think have a chance to really drive down cost long-term. And I don't think any stone should be left unturned, especially in the market we're in. We're talking about challenging recruiting markets. We're talking about high cost. We should be exploring all these options.
Some awesome advice. So Ed, this was great. We're actually running out of time. If anybody wanted to reach you, Ed, what's the best way for them to reach you over at Vanguard?
Yeah, sure. You can reach me at eprobst@vanguardbenefitsyou.com or our website, which is vanguardbenefitsyou.com.
So thank you everyone for tuning in today. For those of you who missed our nonprofit board training series or trends report webinar, they are on our YouTube channel. So feel free to check them out. Stay safe, everyone. We're going to be coming back again next month, but we'll be sending dates out and topics. So thanks, everyone. We look forward to seeing you again next month. Take care.
Thanks, Ken.
Thanks again,
Thanks,
Ed.
everyone.
Bye.